Welcome in, everybody, to Betting Pros. It's time to place your bets. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and it's time already, if you can believe it, to look ahead to week 2 in the NFL. Some fun things happening in week 1, some not some fun things as well. Got that Cleveland upset. That felt really good. The Pittsburgh Steelers one did not go well. Ooh, God. And speaking of not going well, how about those Giants? That was a tough loss there on Sunday Night Football in front of the entire world. But again, it's only week 1, so how much are we going to take out of that? And how much are we going to try to take advantage of it in the early lines? That's what today is about. And to help me do it, of course, is Pat Fitzmaurice back again, as always, every Monday. And our new best friend, Sam Hoppen, who is also our data analyst wizard, who is going to give you some hard, cold facts based on math and science that are going to help you make some bets. And that sounds like a good thing to me. Fitzy, I know we kind of talked about this in week 1, some of the things that went on there. I got to say, the one thing, too, that really came out of the blue for me was I was stunned that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went into Minnesota and won. I didn't think there was any way that that was going to happen. What was the most surprising outcome of all the games for you in week 1?
The Bengals getting 6 first downs, Joe. I did not see that one coming at all. Thought that was going to be a pretty close game and just a completely one-sided affair. So, the Bengals are a team I have no idea what to make of as we head into week 2 right now.
All right, Sam, your week 1, obviously tumultuous, I'm sure, like most people's. But was there one thing that was really surprising to you that you just did not see coming that kind of hit you in the face out of nowhere?
I mean, it was the Rams over the Seahawks for me. I didn't think the Rams had any shot of putting up more than 10 points against the Seahawks defense, and they just put it on them, even without Cooper Kupp. So that was pretty shocking to me. And then the Seahawks offense not really clicking like we had seen it last year.
Yeah, so a lot of things to get through, and obviously looking at week 2, we still got one more game to play tonight, but that's old news, that's history. It's time to get ahead of the lines, and for you to stay ahead of the lines too, make sure you download the Betting Pros app. That's the way to do that, and you can also make sure you get the app, line alerts as well, because those are very important. When you download that BP app, in addition to tracking all of your picks, you can also sign up for the movement alerts, which are really important. So we're going to look at the early lines here, but throughout the week, things are going to change. So you want to set those game notifications so that you're alerted every time a certain line that you've got your eye on moves. And they're going to move. We always know they might even move during this show, but we'll keep you up to date. Make sure you subscribe to Betting Pros channel as well over on the YouTube side, because we're always giving away free stuff, including an Aaron Jones jersey. He had himself a good game. Did pull up with a hamstring, but that's okay. But this Aaron Jones autographed jersey can be yours. All you have to do is subscribe to Betting Pros YouTube, drop a comment below, and click that little bell until it goes ding for notifications. That's it. That's all you got to do. And the Aaron Jones jersey can be yours. We'll be giving away lots of free stuff. More to come on that. But let's get to the games, gentlemen. And let's start here with the Minnesota Vikings and the Eagles. Thursday night football, so no rest for the weary here. Probably in some ways, Pat, the best thing for the Minnesota Vikings is a short week, not to dwell on that terrible, horrible, no good loss. If you're looking right now early on here, it looks like the Eagles are 7.5-point home favorites. Minnesota will be going on the road. It's always tough to go on the road, especially early in the year in a short week. So does the 7.5 feel right here, and the total at 48.5 early on?
Yeah, I mean, the line feels about right, what it should be at, but I think I'm inclined to lay the points here, Joe. And maybe you were a little more surprised by that Vikings toe stubbing in week 1 than I was, but they were so much worse than their 2022 record. I mean, they were 11-0 in one-score games in 2022, which we'll never see happen again. We'll never see a team have that kind of record and get outscored on the year. They were a bottom 10 team in terms of overall DVOA. And I think the Eagles can play a lot better than they did in week 1. They were outgained by 131 yards by the Patriots. Still came away with the W, but I think they can clean things up and become more of the well-oiled machine we saw down the stretch last season. So I'm inclined to lay the points. I also kind of like the over because I think the Eagles are going to get it together on offense this week.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up here, Sam, because the Eagles only had one offensive touchdown yesterday against the Patriots. Now, Patriots defense is always going to come ready to play. You know, it was raining too up in Foxborough, a lot of factors, Tom Brady day, all the things happening. But do you think maybe the 7.5 is giving the Eagles too much credit because that offense did not look great out of the gate here in week 1?
I don't think it's giving them too much credit. I mean, last year we saw Philadelphia and Minnesota play in prime time, and we all know how that disaster turned out for Minnesota. So I think that line is about right. I'm probably not touching it because I do think that Minnesota has, a chance with potentially Philadelphia's offense sleeping a little bit. Maybe could wake up this Thursday night, but I really like the over in this game. Minnesota's offense was moving the ball pretty decently yesterday, and they had a couple of costly turnovers in Tampa Bay's territory, so that stifled their drives quite a bit. So I think both of these offenses are going to be fine. I think it could be a high-scoring shootout potential game.
All right, Green Bay and Atlanta, the next one on the docket here. We still have some time to get some clarity about what's going on with Aaron Jones and that injury, as we mentioned before. So far, it looks like you're getting this number somewhere between 1.5. Obviously, on the Green Bay side of things, Jordan Love did look pretty good in that game. The total for this number right now is around 40.5 and some other spots here on bettingpros.com. Sam, your thoughts here? Do you see any early value on this game here? Atlanta and Green Bay both coming off wins yesterday.
I'm going to try to take my Green Bay bias out of this and look at the fact that Atlanta's defense is much better than Chicago's. And so I think that's what will keep this game closer. I do think that the under could probably be in play here, even though it is pretty low. I think it's sitting right around 40 points right now. And it could just be one of those grinded out games with two offenses that have inexperienced quarterbacks against defenses that played pretty well in week one. The Packers defense played better than I think a lot of people expected, being able to hold that Bears offense to just 20 points, get the pick six as well. So I slightly lean the Packers on the side, just knowing that I expect Aaron Jones to be able to play. I think they didn't rush him back in the game Sunday because they had the game in hand at that point. So I think hopefully having Christian Watson back this week as well would be huge for that offense too.
All right, so as the Packers may or may not be healthy this week, Pat, do you see any early value on this line here in this game in Atlanta?
Yeah, so just before we started recording the show, the Packers were -1 on DraftKings, and I think that there would only be one way this line would move if Aaron Jones were to be ruled out, and it would go to the Falcons. I think they would be even money at worst, maybe favored if that happened. Sam mentioned how well the Packers defense played, and we're both Packers fans. Yes, they did play really well against the Bears. The trouble is the Packers are better against the pass than the run defensively. And we know the Falcons are going to run the ball well, and the Packers have not had a good run defense for years now. So that's kind of concerning to me. The effectiveness of their offensive balance, if they don't have Aaron Jones, is concerning to me because, as we were talking about before the show, I don't think A.J. Dillon is very good. So I am inclined to take the Falcons in the money line here and kind of staying away from the total. I would want to bet the over, but I'm not betting the over on Falcons games with Arthur Smith there. They just run the ball too much. If anything, I would take the over, but I don't think I'm going to play it here.
Yeah, the under sounds interesting, especially with that pace of play and how run heavy they were. And you have to imagine that would carry over again this week at home, too, with Algier and Bijan Robinson. The Bears are going to travel to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so the Bucs go home conquering heroes of Minnesota. -2.5 here on the Bucs side. They are favorites. 43.5 is basically that number you're getting on this total. Pat, I'm going to ask you this straight up. Do you think the wrong team is just favored in this game?
It seems that way, Joe. And normally one of my favorite bets is the team coming off a bitter defeat against the team that's fat and happy, coming off a satisfying victory. But I was so thoroughly unimpressed with the Bears' passing game and the design of it yesterday. Screen passes are great to dial up, but when you're throwing 80% of 80% of your playbook is screen passes, they're not going to work as well. And they were just. There was such a one-dimensional Bears passing game. So I was kind of nervous about that, and I'm not really ready to touch this one.
Yeah, I can understand that. This one has a lot of curiosity to it. The Bears coming off that tough loss here. The Buccaneers coming off a huge unexpected win. To me, this is one of those dangerous trap games where people just automatically will start buying in on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it feels like the line's telling us that. But Sam, should we be listening?
I think Chicago is the pick here. Looks like they're right around -2.5, heavily favored towards that, and then -3 at some books. If you can get, that's for Tampa Bay. If Chicago is +3, I think I'd take that. They have, in my opinion, the better quarterback than Tampa Bay. They, on the flip side of the Minnesota turnovers, were the beneficiary of those turnovers from Minnesota. So I think this is a bit of an overreaction to a one-game sample. I think on the total, the Bucs have probably more talented players, but I think as a team, the Bears are the better rated team right now.
Speaking of overreactions, the Detroit Lions went in on Thursday night, kicked off the season with a huge upset win over the Kansas City Chiefs, the defending champions. 5.5 points. They are favored now over the Seattle Seahawks, who lost at home to the Los Angeles Rams, and a lot of people did not think that was going to help. So a lot of, again, odd circumstances here in some of these week 2 games, this being one of them. So the Lions 5.5 point favorites, 50.5 is the number right now. When you're looking at this here, Sam, do you see any early value here potentially? And do you think maybe the Lions aren't as good as we saw, and maybe the Seahawks are better than we saw week 1?
This is one I'm not quite sure about right now. Seattle lost both of their tackles during the game on Sunday. That said, I don't think Detroit's offense was at its peak performance and think they could really push it against Seattle this week like we saw Los Angeles do yesterday. So I think if I had to choose one, it would be Detroit with the points, but it's close right now, and I think I would stay away right now.
Okay, Pat, are you staying away right now from this line and waiting to see where things go?
I am, Joe. I'm staying away. It's another case of a team coming off a bitter loss versus a team fat and happy after a big win. But
fat and happy with extra time off, too.
Right, that's the thing. Right, the Lions have some extra prep time. As Sam mentioned, Seattle's got some key infrastructure-type injuries. So I'm probably going to avoid this one. Like, it's a game where I want to bet Seattle, but I just don't have the confidence to do it.
Now, Pat, barring catastrophic injuries, I'm not going to take too much out of tonight's game, the Monday night game that we have ahead of us here when it comes to the Buffalo Bills. So far, the Buffalo Bills are 9.5 point favorites at home against the Raiders. So as long as Josh Allen and the Bills are intact when they come home, I don't really care what happens to this game. I know there's going to be a lot of emotion running through that building. It was 9/11. It was New York. It was the first Aaron Rodgers debut for the New York Jets as their new quarterback. So much happening in that game. So I'm just not going to take too much out of it. That being said, the Raiders also pulled out a sneaky victory. This feels like a smash game here, the 9.5. The total on this game is 48. But Pat, do you think this early in the season that a margin this big is actually too much to give anybody?
I think it is, especially if the Bills have a big week 1 victory over a division rival. I could see them having a letdown game in week 2 at home against the Raiders, a game they probably think they can just show up for and win.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Sam, when you're looking at this too, again, the 9.5 is a big number here. Do you think you wait on this one and see if the Bills put a hurting on the Jets and it gets even bigger and then maybe take the Raider side to cover?
I don't know that there is a game outcome tonight that will drastically change things from the Bills' perspective, barring a massive injury, like you said, whether it's to, God forbid, Josh Allen or someone else on the offense. But it is such a big line to lay this early in the season where, again, we saw some crazy things happen in week 1. Crazy things are going to happen again in week 2. And so I don't want either side of this. I think the over in this game is a little bit more interesting because I think Buffalo has the firepower. Las Vegas, again, played decently on offense last night. And I don't think Buffalo's defense is as strong as people expect them to be. So I would lean the over and staying away from sides right now.
Okay, and just so everybody knows too, as you continue to make these look ahead bets here, if you do see things that you like and you want to get in on them, make sure you're syncing all your sports books to Betting Pros. That's how you get it done. That's how you get the best lines here, because there will be movement after tonight's game. You want to stay ahead of that. And also, we want you to start betting with us and start winning some free stuff, because we've got that NFL contest that's running here. So if you haven't already, join it. bettingpros.com/NFL contest. It's free to join, and we're giving away free stuff. If you already have the app, all you do is click that community tab on the Betting Pros app and just go right to the NFL contest. Join it. All you have to do, make 5 NFL picks every single week, 100 throughout the season. The grand prize winner is going to get an autographed Jackson Smith and Jigba jersey, the rookie sensation for the Seattle Seahawks. We're also giving away swag from Fantasy Pros, from Betting Pros, as well as 1-year premium upgrades to both apps. So weekly winners, monthly winners, overall winners, but everybody wins because it's free and we're picking games and it's a good time. And later on this week, we'll see who the top dogs are. So go join the NFL contest over at Betting Pros. It's easy to do and it's free and it's fun. And those are all good things. All good things. Not so good things here for the Chargers. A tough loss there. A PI that probably a lot of people could do without. There was like 7,000 flags thrown on that play. It was one of the most amazing things. My daughter, who is a young football player herself, laughed out loud. She said, "Do they have any more flags to throw?" When she watched that happen. It was the funniest thing. And I said, "No, I don't think they do, dear. I don't think they do." But regardless, the Chargers will try to get their season back together. They are, again, 3-point underdogs going into Tennessee. Tennessee's favorite they're 3-point favorites, going on the road to Tennessee. 45.5 is the number for this one. Sam, when you're looking at this one here, I think on paper we all agree the Chargers offense is much more interesting and much more explosive. Is it just as simple as that? Or do we see a better version of Ryan Tannehill? Because yesterday was not good, did not complete a lot of his passes. DeAndre Hopkins and him didn't seem to get on the same page either. So do you think the Chargers go in here and smash and take out their aggression from that Miami game? Or do they run into a team at home in the Titans that is going to be prepared and kind of bring them down to their level? And that's what Mike Vrabel does best.
I think the Chargers go in and lay it on them. I think that Titans showed us this offseason, drafting Will Levis, what they sort of think of Ryan Tannehill long term. Obviously, this is a 1-game sample from this year, but he did not look great at all. And the Chargers defense is nothing to write home about. They got blasted by Tua and the Dolphins yesterday, but I just think the Chargers are going to be able to put up 24 plus points against Tennessee. Derek Carr didn't play great, and the Saints were able to move the ball pretty effectively against Tennessee's defense. So I'm laying the Chargers with the points here.
Pat, this is one, again, on paper, looks pretty obvious. I know the home underdog is something we always love to go for, but did you see anything in that Titans game yesterday that gave you confidence that they could pull off an upset here against the Chargers at home?
Oh, boy, Joe, I sure didn't. Tannehill looked every bit as bad as the stat line would suggest.
Sure
the Titans' offensive line, a lot of people thought it would be the worst in the league, and I see no reason to dispute that assessment after what we saw in week 1. And it just seems like the Chargers would have superior firepower. But that said, I cannot bring myself to bet against Mike Vrabel at home, a Mike Vrabel coach team at home. I can't do it. I do think there's a chance that Vrabel can turn this into a mud wrestling match and bring the Chargers down to the Titans level. So I'm probably going to avoid this one. It gives me a queasy feeling betting on the Chargers as a road dog here. And we know the Chargers tortured history, right? Somehow this is going to be a close game, and they're going to find a way to lose.
That's what I'm always so skeptical of the Chargers when they're obvious favorites, or it just never seems to work out when it's too good to be true for them. And speaking of staying in the mud, we might as well just, hang out there and talk about the Texans taking on the Colts here. Texans are at home. Again, this number kind of fluctuating. It seems like the Texans are 1-point favorites in some spots. Again, this line is one that's probably going to be volatile here. Anthony Richardson did get banged up here at the end of that game, so a little bit more clarity on that injury will make everybody feel warm and fuzzy. You saw Richardson run a lot. I'd like to see him slide a little bit more. That's one caveat there. It's really hard to take too much out of that CJ Stroud performance too. On the road in Baltimore, really hostile environment, tough place to play no matter for anybody, let alone a rookie. So Pat, the number's 40.5 here. Do you think you stick with this here and maybe play the under on the 40.5 with these two offenses that, seem like they're trying to figure things out? Because some sloppy play really led to the Colts being in that game that maybe they shouldn't have been quite so close in.
Oh, look at this, Joe. We're early in the season and we're on the same page already. We didn't even talk about this pre-show, and you mentioned it. The only thing I would touch in this game would be the under.
Yeah.
And especially with the Houston offensive line so banged up. I think they were down 3 starters yesterday, and it kind of showed on offense against the Ravens. Like, Stroud played better than I thought he would, considering the state of his offensive line. But yeah, Richardson is banged up. Like, this is just not going to be a pretty game offensively. I don't really want to watch this game, let alone bet a side. So I might just put the bet on the under, not pay any attention, and see if I made any money come 3:00 Central Time on Sunday.
Sam, typically this part in the season too, where teams are still ramping up, the unders tend to come in a little bit more, historically speaking. Do you think this is one of those instances with this game here?
It is, and I think Houston's defense is probably the best unit of all of them that are going to be on the field on Sunday. They held the Ravens offense to a negative expected points added per dropback on Sunday, a success rate of only 39%. They pressured Lamar Jackson on 39% of his dropbacks and sacked him on 15%. So I think with the Colts offensive line and, as good as Anthony Richardson is at avoiding sacks, I mean, you could have said the same thing about Lamar Jackson and they were able to get to him. So I do think with this low of a total, obviously the Colts side of things comes into play as a potential teaser leg if you want to do that, pushing them out to 7.5 if they're plus 1.5 on your book.
Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson are now going to travel after a big win against Houston last week. They're going to travel to Cincinnati, who, let's be honest, did not look good. And this is a fascinating situation here. So the Bengals get the 3 right now. Everyone's just kind of sitting and waiting here. And for those of you who don't remember, the Bengals came out of the gate slow last year too, 0-2. Joe Burrow never seems to have a normal offseason, no matter what happens. So I, for one, Sam, am just not going to take too much out of this. The Bengals are favorites. I think they should be favorites. I think the Bengals are going to win this football game at the end of the day. The number for this game is 45.5. I don't see any early value on this. I was hoping that we would see potentially maybe over the week that people would start to maybe bet the Ravens and all of a sudden this number would move a little bit, and maybe it will. Do you think this game does move as people have more time to sit with how bad Joe Burrow and the Bengals were? Or do you think they're just going to believe in how good Joe Burrow and the Bengals have been and this number is going to hold?
I think it stays about the same. I mean, the one big question on the Ravens side is Mark Andrews' health is decent as the Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman played in the game in Houston. I just mentioned how poor they were on a per dropback basis. I mean, the Bengals are favored by 3 at home, depending on how much you account towards home field advantage. That makes this almost close to a pick on a neutral field, and that's sort of where it feels like these teams are. Just, the Ravens offense didn't look great, even though it's, this new explosive offense from Todd Monken. The Bengals looked absolutely atrocious, but on the whole, I think we expect the Bengals to come back. So I honestly think this line is right about perfect where it is right now, both the total and the side. So I'm not touching it right now. I'm waiting to see what happens with Mark Andrews and then potentially playing the Ravens.
Yeah, that's the interesting play, is if Andrews' health gets better, maybe you do go the opposite side, and maybe it's another 0-2 start for the Bengals, Pat. But I'm kind of where Sam is, which is this just feels right. I still believe in the Cincinnati Bengals. One bad week is not going to change that for me, especially with the bad weather, especially with the ferocious pass rush with Myles Garrett that they have, and a guy who was really, just trying to get back in action. And you could tell things were just off. They were out of sync. And I can only imagine a full, healthy week of practice. Hopefully, things get better for the Bengals. But how do you see this one, Pat?
Yeah, and we know that week one is often sort of an extension of the preseason with how little the starters play in the new 3-week NFL preseason. But man, I just cannot bet the Bengals after what I saw yesterday. And I watched a lot of that game, even though the Bengals offense was making my eyeballs bleed. Like I just subjected myself to that torture. And the 6 first downs, oh my goodness. I just have a hard time believing they can suddenly stomp the gas pedal and kick it in against a good Ravens defense. And like I'd be all the more eager to take this game if I was totally confident Lamar Jackson could take advantage of the Bengals safeties. You know, they no longer have Jesse Bates back there who was intercepting passes for the Falcons yesterday. They've no longer got Von Bell back there. So, man, as much as the Ravens passing game looked out of sync, everyone except Zay Flowers at least yesterday, like I want to play the Ravens in this game because I have a hard time. Like the Ravens do not play many clunkers. It's pretty rare for the Ravens to go out there and lay an egg. They're usually going to give you their best shot under John Harbaugh. And I just don't know if the Bengals can take a good punch with the way they looked in week one.
Interesting. All offseason, Pat, I talked about it. I was like, losing Von Bell and Jesse Bates, I think is a little, everyone kept telling me, that's okay, they're getting younger and more athletic. And maybe that's true, but they're not getting more experienced. And I think that's something you saw in this first week there that made a difference in that game. The Chiefs have had a long time to think long and hard about what went wrong for them on opening night. They are still 3-point favorites going on the road for the Jacksonville Jaguars. The number for this one is 51.5. Now look, Calvin Ridley looked good. Zay Jones looked good. Trevor Lawrence played well. So, I think Jacksonville, went in there, tough in-division game on the road. They came out with the W. That's all that matters. Now they go home. But Pat, let's be honest. If the Kansas City Chiefs had stomped a mud hole like they should have in the Detroit Lions and Kadarius Toney caught anything and they won by 10 points, this would not be 3. Therefore, I'm on Kansas City and I'm Kansas City right now because I think as more people have time to think about this one, I think more people are going to start to gravitate towards that idea. What do you think?
Yeah, we've got Andy Reid with extra prep time. The Chiefs in a rare hole since they haven't lost a week one game since, I believe, 2014. So maybe a little more urgency for the Chiefs after, in 8 years of winning week one. And Joe, we know which way the line is going to move if we get any positive news on the Travis Kelce injury front or the Chris Jones contract front. So, suddenly you're not going
honestly, Pat, they got to the quarterback. They put pressure on Jared Goff.
Right.
Nick Bolton was over there going over the top in the middle there. It wasn't even a matter of, putting pressure on, and Chris Jones' presence, although important on the field, it's not why they lost that game. They lost that game because just the ineptitude of the wide receiver core to get on the same page here with Patrick Mahomes. But I don't think I'm going to bet on that happening 2 weeks in a row. Are you?
Agreed. And so get it now. But we know that the news on those guys would change the line, Joe. And right now you're getting them at less than a field goal, for sure. Because if you don't grab the Chiefs and Chiefs now at -2.5 on DraftKings as of this morning, I think it could go to 4.5 if we know they have Kelce and Jones.
Sam, do you see things going in that same direction if you start to get better buzz as the week goes on that this number is going to grow here, especially if Kelce's back for this one?
I do think so. I was pretty surprised last Thursday how much the line had moved after the Kelce news and then confirmation that Chris Jones wasn't going to play. I think individually, neither of them are worth the amount of points that the line moved, but together they are the second and third best players on the Kansas City Chiefs. So to get potentially both of them back would be huge. I do think that Chris Jones might have the bigger impact on this game if he is able to play. And I say that because the Jaguars offensive line did not look great. I think one of their starters went down partway through the game. I can't recall if he came back.
Brandon Sheriff.
Yes, yes, that's it. That's what I was thinking of. So if Chris Jones is back, I mean, again, we saw that Kansas City was able to get some pressure on Jared Goff, and Detroit has one of the best offensive lines in the league. If they're at full strength against this Jaguars team, I think that Kansas City could just blow them away. I echo all of the sentiment you guys made about the drops and those being super fluky and not likely going to happen 2 weeks in a row.
The Rams, who historically have given the 49ers fits the last few years, they are 7-point underdogs at home against the 49ers, who went out there in a non-conference game on the road and beat the crap out of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's be honest, that's just exactly what they did. This one's fascinating to me, Sam. The number's 42.5. The line is 7. Puka Nacua played very well. The Rams are coming off a huge road victory in their division. I love the Rams in this game. Am I wrong?
I think so. I mean,
okay.
The lines actually moved another point. The 49ers are now favored by 8 points, which I think is more about confidence in the 49ers as a team than, disbarring what happened with the Rams in their game. I mean, the defense was dominant. The offense was clicking on all cylinders. Brock Purdy was making some plays. And so I think that, again, laying 8 points is going to be a lot in a division game. I think this is another opportunity to tease the 49ers down to 2 points because, again, I don't see a situation in which the Rams come away with a win here. Obviously, I think I said the same thing last week.
I was going to say, you might have said the same thing the last 8 times they've met, though, because the 49ers always look like the better team on paper, and the 49ers, again, struggle against the Rams. That fits. That's I think what's so important. This is one of those games I think that really stands out to me because Matthew Stafford is not Kenny Pickett, so they're going to meet another quarterback here. It's very different. So Fitz, when you're looking at this game, do you think that maybe, again, this is one of those traps where we feel so good about the 49ers who look so good in week 1, but we forget, hey, this is a whole other set of circumstances, and this is a team in the Rams, Fitz, that has really given them problems over the last few seasons.
Well, Joe, I went back and looked at that, and I wonder if it was maybe like earlier in the Sean McVay era that the Rams were sort of had the Niners number, because it looks like the Niners have won 8 of the last 9 in this series. And like some of those games were close. I don't know what the ATS record would be for the 49ers. But yeah, I mean, like I was surprised by how well the Rams defense played against Seattle, or maybe the Seahawks offense was just that bad. And I have a hard time seeing the Rams be able to stop this 49ers offense, which looked so machine-like against a very good Pittsburgh defense.
They did.
In week 1. So, yeah, I mean, like hearing that this has gone from 7 to 8 makes me a little nervous. Like I love getting it at an even 7 points, but push it past the touchdown, I get a little more nervous. As of now, I'm just going to lay off this game, I think.
Give me the Rams. I don't know. I'm feeling crazy. I don't know why I'm so anti-49er this year. I don't know. Brock Purdy looked great. Everything looked great. I'm just not there yet. I need to see it again. New York, I don't know if I need to see them again. They are 5-point favorites going on the road to Arizona. That feels right. Fitz. Again, I don't know if this is a game you want to get involved in. Right here, it's 38.5 is the number in most spots here. Some 38 as well. The Giants looked awful. They got nothing done. This is going to be a rough week for them, Fitz. Do you think they take it out on the Cardinals here?
Bettors were so mortified by that performance, Joe. It's already down to 4.5. I guess people are betting the Cardinals on this, but man, I feel like the Giants have to bounce back, don't they? Like that actually, their first drive of the game, they were going right downfield. Then, Daniel Jones, like there was a fumbled snap or something. They got thrown back, knocked back to outside the 25-yard line, get the field goal blocked and run in for a touchdown, and everything just snowballed from there. So, man, I feel like they're going to bounce back. I still have a lot of faith in Brian Daboll as a head coach. I think he's going to circle the wagons this week and beat a team that we really don't know if they actually want to win games this year with the Cardinals. I mean, they are all in, I think, in the Caleb Williams Derby. So, I'm going to keep targeting the Cardinals to bet against as long as the lines stay reasonable enough and we don't get into the college football realm of lines where we're seeing, 20-point spreads every week.
Sam, I know it was as bad as it could possibly get Sunday night, but the Arizona Cardinals are also theoretically as bad as it gets. Do you think the 5 is actually, or the 4.5 now, is still too much credit from what you didn't see out of the Giants yesterday?
I don't think so. I think this is a good line. I made it about 4 points before the end of the Sunday night football game. I think 5 is probably a good line too, and would take the Giants here. I mean, they were playing what many pegged as the best defense in the league in Dallas coming into the season. So their struggles on offense are not as surprising as I think many people thought it was. Now, granted, their entire offense is basically Darren Waller and Saquon Barkley, but I think they'll have so much more success against Arizona's defense than Dallas's defense. I think Daniel Jones is a much better quarterback, at least right now, than Sam Howell is. And so I'd be laying the points with the Giants here. I think this is a buy low opportunity on the Giants and a potential for them to bounce back in a big way.
We'll see if the line changes after Monday Night Football, but Dallas is 3-point favorites at home against the Jets. And as good as the Jets defense is, with that offensive line struggling a little bit in preseason, Sam, after watching Micah Parsons get to the quarterback on Sunday night and watching some of the problems that they were giving Daniel Jones, I'm loving the Cowboys side of this game at the 3 at the -110 right now, 45 and a half, depending on the sports book. That's where the number is in terms of the total. But I don't want to take too much out of week 1 and how good teams look or how good, bad teams can also look. But the Dallas Cowboys defense looks like it's for real. And they were for real last year too. One of the better fantasy defenses around. Do you think that this one should be this close?
I do think so. I mentioned earlier that the game tonight won't have much impact on sort of Buffalo's outlook rest of season, but I think it could change a lot about New York's outlook rest of season because, again, we don't know what this offense is going to look like with Aaron Rodgers. The defense is supposed to be great, but can they contain Josh Allen like they had in the past? I think where I would attack this game is the under. Aaron Rodgers is notoriously a slow guy. He drains the play clock down to the last second. Both of these defenses are, again, incredible. New York has some issues on the offensive line. Dallas, I think, still wants to run the ball a bit more when they can. And so I would take under 46 if you can get that.
All right, Pat, how do you feel about this one? I'm very much on the Cowboys side of this game. No matter what happens, good or bad for the Jets tonight. Your thoughts on Jets and Cowboys? Do you see any early value?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way Sam does about this game. Like, I don't want to touch either side just yet. I agree with your takes on the Cowboys, Joe. I was kind of in on the Cowboys preseason and have some futures on them to win the NFC and win the Super Bowl. But I do think the Jets have, if you're going to keep giving me Jets totals in the mid-40s, as we get in week 1 with Bills Jets, and as we get in week 2 with Cowboys Jets, I'm going to keep pounding the under, because I think the Jets might have the best defense in the league, or at least certainly right up there with Dallas, San Francisco, Philadelphia. And as you mentioned, Joe, the Jets' offensive line is a row of New York subway turnstiles. So,
that's going to be a problem, Pat.
This is an under team. Absolutely. With Micah Parsons, how are they going to block Micah Parsons?
They're not. And that's going to cause the turnovers, and that's going to cause some problems. And that's why I'm more on the Dallas side of this game than the total, because I fear some of those turnovers, if they turn into points, that's going to be a problem for that total number. That could be, because look what happened on Sunday.
Sure,
it could be a very big repeat of that. The Broncos hosting the Commanders. The Broncos are 3.5-point home favorites. Their home debut did not go well yesterday. Fitzy, the number's 40 for this one. I have no idea yet of who these teams really are. I'm running from this game.
Yeah, one of those. This is one of those lines, Joe. I just looked at it and threw my hands up in the air, like no.
Okay,
feel for
you can
this.
have it. Sam, you want anything on this one, or you want to hard pass this one?
I'd take Washington and the points here.
Really? Okay.
Denver's offense still looks out of sorts. I think Washington's defense is incredible. That defensive line, was wrecking Arizona's offensive line. I don't think Denver's offensive line is that great either. Denver's offense, again, it just looks out of sorts. I think they still have a ways to go to get to where they want to be. Such a low total too. I think they keep this game close and have the potential to even win outright against Denver.
All right, the New England Patriots are at home again 2 weeks in a row. They are, again, home underdogs. +2 is the number against the Miami Dolphins, who put on a show there with Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa in Los Angeles. If you like the Pats for the upset, +114 on the money line, but 45.5 is the number for this one. Sam, do you see any early value here?
I got to go with Miami. Their offense just looked so good. New England plays a decent amount of man coverage, and I don't know that there's anyone that can cover this Tyreek and Waddle combination. It's New England's defense is great, and they did do a lot to stifle Philadelphia's offense. But again, we saw on display yesterday what Miami's offense can do, how explosive they are. Tua was making some great throws, and I do think Miami's defense does have a little bit of work to do. They didn't play great against the Chargers, but this New England offense is not nearly as daunting as the Chargers offense is. So I'll take the -2 with Miami here.
All right. Well, they did hold the Eagles to 1 offensive touchdown. Does that matter to you at all here, Pat? Do you think Miami comes out here a little flat after a huge output last week?
Yeah, Joe. I mean, you're a Patriots fan, but I can assure you I'm not just pandering to you when I say that I like the Patriots and have already bet the Patriots in this game. It feels like the Dolphins are getting a little bit too much credit with this line for that, undisputedly impressive victory against the Chargers. And it doesn't feel like the Pats are getting quite enough credit for putting up a really good fight. As I said, they outgained the Eagles by 131 yards in that game in week 1. Now Miami has to go from playing on the West Coast to playing in the Northeast. It's the NFL's hurricane season avoidance schedule. And that's a pretty tough 2-week opening road stretch. So I kind of like the Patriots here for a second straight week at home, regrouping after the tough loss to the Philadelphia Eagles in week 1.
All right, 2 more prime times to talk about here. The New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are at home. They are 2.5-point underdogs at home to the Saints. 40.5 is the number here. Saints defense looked pretty good. This line feels about right to me. I don't see any value, Pat, but do you?
Nope, no value. I just don't quite believe in the Saints enough to bet them as a 3-point road dog or road favorite.
Do you agree here, where you're just kind of waiting and seeing with these teams a little bit more?
Yeah. It's it's tough because, again, the Saints, I think as a whole, are the better team, but man, laying 3 points with them just doesn't feel right at this point.
All right, last one here. Pittsburgh Steelers, 1.5-point underdogs. Here we go again, Sam. The Cleveland Browns are coming to town. Cleveland looked really sharp, really good. And I think Cleveland is one of those teams that needed to get off to a good start. Answer some questions about Deshaun Watson. Answer some questions about who this team's going to be and how they're going to play this year. They did that. But this is an in-division game. We all know you can basically just erase that again because you just never know week to week what's going to happen. 42.5 is the number. Sam, do you think Pittsburgh rebounds? Or do you think Cleveland rolls Pittsburgh 2 weeks in a row?
I don't think Pittsburgh rebounds, but I also don't think Cleveland rolls quite again. I mean, Cleveland's defense looked tremendous. I do think we need to give them some credits with bringing in Jim Schwartz as their defensive coordinator this offseason. The Steelers' offense looked out of sorts. It seems like they're going to be without Deontay Johnson as well. And so as good as the Browns' offensive output was on Sunday, Deshaun Watson still looked out of sorts. He was missing some passes, and it just didn't look very pretty. So I'm staying away from this game too. I think if I was going to pick something, it would be the under right now. It looks like the line is dropping to about 40.5 or 40 on some books, which is low. But again, it's the AFC North. I hate to pull that card, but both of these defenses, I think, can be up to the task to stop the opposing offense.
Fitz, any input here on this one here? This is a tough one. It's a tight one. Vegas is telling you so.
Oh, Joe, the Steelers hurt me so much. They turned what should have been a winning week 1 into a break-even week 1. So maybe I'll just double up to catch up on Steelers games this week.
There you go.
Last week from the Steelers bye week on, they were 6th in the NFL in overall DVOA. And then they looked terrific in the 2023 preseason. So I was really surprised that they laid an egg as big as they did in week 1 against the 49ers. And I suspect we will not see consecutive poor performances under Mike Tomlin. That sort of thing just doesn't happen under Mike Tomlin with the Steelers. So I like them to rebound against a Browns team that should come in. Again, Joe, it's the formula: fat and happy against very angry and bitter.
Right.
And I'm gonna bet the angry, bitter team this time.
You should listen to Fitz. Fitz is probably right. I'm scared to death. I need some more time to marinate on this one. But again, make sure you are setting those line alerts on the BP app for certain games that you have got your eye on. If you want to see that line movement like we talked about Kansas City, you get those game notifications. That's very important. Go do that. Go download the app. Go sync all your sports books. Follow us there, bettingpros.com/Joe/Fitz, and of course /Sam as well. And drop a comment below. What early lines do you like? We want to hear from you on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel, and you just might win yourself an Aaron Jones autographed jersey. And come bet against us, with us, for the good of humanity. The NFL contest is there. Again, it's free. bettingpros.com/NFL contest. Join, win a bunch of free stuff there as well. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Sam and Fitz, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Nice.